Hello everyone, today we'll be exploring a heavy yet fascinating topic: why did Donald Trump fail so spectacularly in his two biggest international challenges? First, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, a war that has lasted over 3 years, paralyzing not only the countries involved but also the global economy and politics. Second, the US-China trade war, where Trump thought he could teach China a lesson, but the result was the US paying the price with severe losses. In today's video, we'll dive deep into these failures, examine how Trump handled these situations, and ask whether these mistakes could serve as lessons for future leaders. But the real question is, did Trump even realize that his decisions were setting America back? Let's find out together. It's interesting to think that someone who always claims to be the master of negotiations could make such ridiculous mistakes in the most important negotiations. Let's see what Trump did with these two conflicts. Could he really be the only one still believing he can win every game? Let's start with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This is not just a military conflict between two countries but a larger issue involving diplomacy and global power. Before Trump took office, Russia had already started taking actions that threatened stability in Europe, most notably with the annexation of Crimea in 2014, which triggered a massive international backlash. But when Trump took office, everything changed. He not only adopted a very vague approach to handling the issue but also dragged the US into a political mess that few could comprehend. Instead of strongly condemning Russia's actions, Trump saw Putin as a potential partner and even a friend of America. So while Western leaders were uniting to confront Russia's aggressive actions, Trump was talking about enthusiastic meetings with Putin, as if they were playing golf together instead of discussing serious international matters. Does he really understand that Putin is the one who's undermining the foundation of peace and security in Europe? What's even more remarkable is that Trump didn't just fail to deal with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, he also made the situation more complicated. One of Trump's first decisions as president was to meet with Putin without proper preparation, no clear terms, and no specific goals. As president, Trump should have had a comprehensive strategy, not just trying to be friends with the enemy. But instead, he weakened America's position in the eyes of NATO allies and grew closer to a country that was going against all of Western values. Did Trump really believe he could teach Putin a lesson by hugging him and laughing in meetings, ignoring the paradoxes in his policies? Did he think that befriend the enemy strategy would help America achieve anything, other than causing confusion among allies and diminishing America's credibility? The US-China trade war was another major failure of Trump's presidency. Initially, he claimed that tariffs would force China to concede, and the US would benefit from the war. But reality proved otherwise. While China's economy continued to grow stronger, the US faced severe negative impacts from its own policies. Big corporations and consumers had to bear the high tariffs with no real compensation. Trump must have thought he was the best negotiator, but the result was that America took the hit, while China continued to exploit the loopholes to expand its influence. Who would have thought that tariffs wouldn't be a smart strategy but instead a way to drag America into a quagmire from which he couldn't escape? And then the consequences of the trade war started to become clear. Prices for goods in the US skyrocketed, from electronics to food. Small and medium-sized businesses began to feel the pinch as their products were taxed, and they couldn't compete with international competitors. Instead of coming up with strategies to develop domestic manufacturing, Trump just built these tariff walls without considering the impact on consumers and the economy. So, is Trump a wise leader? Or is he just someone chasing tariff policies and then ruining America's economy without even realizing it? Everyone says, success in trade isn't just about winning in tariffs, but Trump didn't listen. We can't ignore another significant issue: America's increasing isolation under Trump. His decisions caused America to lose support from key allies around the world. When Trump withdrew from international agreements like the Paris Climate Agreement and the Iran nuclear deal, the US became an outsider in major global issues. Allied nations started looking for new partners, and China seized the opportunity to expand its influence. If you think that just having a strong America is enough, then Trump certainly didn't understand that America can't survive alone in a globally interconnected world. And when Trump avoided crucial meetings, leaving his allies to fend for themselves, did he really think America would stand strong without international cooperation? We've already gone over the failures in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the US-China trade war, but the impacts didn't stop there. Trump's policies not only weakened the US economy but also drastically reduced America's global influence. And that's the price America had to pay for relying too heavily on short-term strategies, rather than building a strong and sustainable foundation for international relations. Maybe Trump thought he was some great chess player, but the reality is he was playing Chinese chess in a complex international game that's far from simple. The result? America became the loser in this great game. To fully understand, we need to look at the global consequences of Trump's decisions, and you'll see that even countries you thought were America's adversaries are now quietly laughing. The impact of foreign policy on international relations. One of the biggest factors in Trump's failure was his foreign policy. When Trump took office, he declared that he would make America great again by creating deals that would benefit the U.S., including imposing tariffs on imported goods, withdrawing from international agreements he deemed unfavorable, and taking a hardline stance on trade and political partners. However, Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, the Iran nuclear deal, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, caused America to lose its global leadership position, something previous presidents had built over decades. The withdrawal from the Paris Agreement didn't just cause America to lose credibility with Western allies but also weakened global efforts to tackle climate change, a crucial issue for the planet. Moreover, Trump's decision to prioritize economic interests over international commitments left the U.S. more isolated than ever. Countries like China, Russia, and the European Union began seeking alternative partners, especially in critical issues like climate change and trade cooperation. Looking at Trump's decisions, you could see him as a wrecking ball in a garden of international agreements, where each flower represents a crucial deal America had spent centuries building. He didn't just cut down the trees but ripped apart the petals, then proudly declared his decisions as if he was creating a new garden. Impact on the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy under Trump saw periods of strong growth, but this couldn't be sustained in the long term. Trump's protectionist measures, especially tariffs on Chinese imports, caused a surge in the price of goods, directly affecting American consumers. Although Trump claimed that America would become a manufacturing powerhouse again, the reality was that major U.S. companies couldn't endure these high tariffs, forcing them to shift production to other countries. One of the major outcomes of the trade war with China was a significant decline in the U.S. manufacturing sector, especially in industries like electronics, automotive, and textiles, which were the backbone of America's economy for decades. Manufacturers faced rising production costs, while their ability to compete in the global market declined. Additionally, inflation surged domestically, and while Trump tried to cut taxes for big corporations, most of the benefits from these policies didn't trickle down to workers or consumers. These negative impacts would affect the U.S. economy for years, weakening the country's global competitiveness. Trump could boast about a strong economy, but in reality, he's creating time bombs in the U.S. economy that no one can defuse. The dollar can't always be the savior when you keep dumping money into an endless bottomless pit that Trump's policies are creating. Impact on American society and the world. Social division in America increased during Trump's presidency, largely due to his controversial decisions. Never before had issues like race, discrimination, and social inequality been so prominently in focus in American society as during Trump's time in office. His decisions, such as the Muslim travel ban, building the border wall with Mexico, and cutting welfare, made American society more polarized and deeply divided. Furthermore, America's international relations began to deteriorate. America's allies felt insecure, and more countries started looking for alternative partners to collaborate with, such as China. This reduced America's influence on global issues as countries no longer viewed the U.S. as a reliable partner. Meanwhile, powers like Russia and China were seizing opportunities to expand their influence worldwide. Trump may pride himself on making America stronger, but in reality, he's made a large portion of the American population feel left behind. This strength won't last long, and the negative consequences will explode violently both in society and globally. Impact on other countries. Countries like China, Russia, and European nations reacted differently to Trump's policies. China, with its long-term strategy and careful preparation, took advantage of America's rigidity to expand its influence in Asia and Africa. Russia, meanwhile, continued to assert its military and political strength, as Putin wasn't threatened by Trump's measures but was able to manipulate the situation to achieve his own goals. America's allies, including the European Union, also began looking for new partners. Especially after America's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, other countries ramped up cooperation to address this issue without U.S. involvement. As we analyze Trump's failures in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the U.S.-China trade war, it's important to consider his emotional journey. Trump, a man known for his massive ego, was used to winning at all costs in business, but in international diplomacy, he faced a different reality. Trump's ability to control the narrative and project an image of success was shaken by the unfolding crises. His emotional journey during these failures would likely have ranged from frustration to anger, and eventually, to a deep sense of defiance as things spiraled out of his control. In the early stages of both crises, Trump likely experienced a strong sense of frustration. In the Russia-Ukraine conflict, he initially thought his strongman tactics would bring peace or force a deal. However, as Russia's aggression continued, and NATO grew more critical, Trump's pride would have kept him from admitting failure. Instead of acknowledging the flaws in his approach, Trump probably went into denial, blaming others, such as the media, for distorting his actions. He's never been one to admit mistakes. Can you picture Trump, frustrated in private, trying to spin his failure as a win? He probably told himself, "I'm still winning, just wait," as the world watched in disbelief. Moving to the US-China trade war, Trump's overconfidence was evident from the start. He believed tariffs would force China to submit and that America would come out on top. But as the trade war dragged on, and its impact on the US economy became undeniable, Trump's confidence likely shifted to irritation. The tariffs were biting, especially for US businesses, but Trump kept pushing forward, often downplaying the economic consequences. Imagine Trump, standing in front of a mirror, looking at his reflection and thinking, "I'm winning this war." Meanwhile, the tariffs were taking their toll on businesses and consumers, but he continued to ignore the mounting evidence of failure. So, what is the lesson from all these failures? First, a unilateral foreign policy lacking international cooperation can't help America maintain global power. Second, never underestimate the wisdom of your opponents. While Trump just tried to aggressively impose tariffs and put pressure on others, other countries were one step ahead, building long-term relationships and wise strategies. Thanks for watching this video. If you agree with these views, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let's discuss these mistakes in the comments below. See you in the next video.